there, I'm Una, and I'm a unicorn. And do you know what unicorns are bad at? Booking meetings. Except for me, of course. My secret? I use Cirrus Insight to schedule all my meetings. That's Cirrus, spelled C-I-R-R-U-S, Cirrus Insight. Cirrus Insight takes all the hassle out of booking and scheduling my meetings, cutting the amount of steps involved to half, if not more. Now, instead of a 43-message deep email thread where everyone's trying to find the right time to meet, I can just send them to a link on my calendar page. From there, anyone who wants to meet with me can see when I'm available and schedule a meeting. It's magic. Like me. And I should know a thing or two about magic. I'm a unicorn after all. But wait, there's more. Do you use Salesforce? If you do, Cirrus Insight can also remove most of the manual data entry involved with updating and maintaining your Salesforce environment. To learn more and start your 14-day free trial, visit cirrusinsight.com. That's Cirrus, spelled C-I-R-R-U-S, cirrusinsight.com. And tell them Una sent you.
Hello everyone, I'm your host and Salesforce MVP, Christy Campbell. Joining me on the show today is fellow MVP Tiffany Spencer, VP of Salesforce Partnerships at Bitwise, plus founder and executive director of her nonprofit, Tech Forward. You can find her on Trailblazer.me at tspencer23 and on Twitter at @TheTiffSpencer. Today, we're going to dive into the diversity challenges in the Salesforce space, how everyone can be an ally, and how her experiences led her to found Dreamin in Color, with the inaugural event coming in Raleigh at the end of June. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Serious Insights for Admins. I'm your host, Christy Campbell, and today we're diving into diversity in the Salesforce space. And I've got a great guest for you, Tiffany Spencer. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hello, thank you.
Tiffany wears a lot of hats. We talked about her title. She is the VP of Salesforce Partnerships at Bitwise, and also is the founder and executive director of Tech Forward, which is a nonprofit that really segues into exactly what we want to talk about today, as well as the co-founder of Dreamin in Color, which is coming up. So, Tiffany, you want to tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how this topic is important to you?
So I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for over 15 years. I was actually one of the very first 500 certified. So I started my career as an admin for a small land development company based out of Atlanta. And so I took a job as a BA and I took the admin training course and I became the administrator. And so I've worked as an admin, as a business analyst for large companies before going into consulting, and then started my own consulting company with a business partner, sold that company. And through those years, you know, being at different Salesforce events and Dreamforce, I in the beginning didn't see a lot of people that look like me. And I'm really active in the tech community. And so I kind of just chose to kind of be involved in the ecosystem, you know, but not really. What I tell people is that, you know, when you are 5% at work, like the Trailblazer diversity report says, there are 5% of Trailblazers identify as Black or African American. But when you're 5% at work, sometimes you don't want to pay money and fly to go be 5% at an event. And I think that's kind of how I felt in the beginning. And so that's really why I'm really excited about Dreamin in Color and creating a space for this year, Black people to be really see themselves in the Salesforce ecosystem and to allow allies and other people to come and not and celebrate the diversity of this ecosystem.
I think that's great. I think you mentioned the diversity report. I feel like there's kind of this outdated perception that there are not as many educated, qualified people, and that, you know, that it ends up being a diversity hire is somehow not getting you as much and you're only doing it, you know, to check the box. I guess, you know, how have you seen that change? You mentioned, you know, over your time in the industry, or, you know, why do you think that is that, you know, we still have those perceptions? Because I think the reality is that there are women and people of color that are graduating and educated and ready to take these jobs.
So there are numerous reports around where the bottlenecks are in the tech talent pipeline, right? And so, of course, there's, inner city communities and different communities are underfunded, which contributes to less people going into maybe STEM majors. But when you look at the overall talent pipeline, there's lots of different areas that we can focus on. So one of the areas is around hiring and making sure our job descriptions are more inclusive, making sure that we're posting in places where we can attract more diverse talent. And so that is some of the reason why companies are not seeing more diverse candidates show up in their talent pipelines. If they're looking at what their job posting says, where they're posting it, their recruiting practices, especially companies that are heavy on referrals. So if you look at your the makeup of your employees and you have a lot of referrals, then you may get more of what you already have, which may not be very diverse. And then you have to look at on the one side is recruiting, the other side is retention, right? And so what you were talking about is where companies in the ecosystem have to put more thought and effort into retaining their employees. I mean, I remember going into consulting and not having a lot of support. I had some really great managers later in my career, but in the beginning and middle, it wasn't, I didn't feel very supported. I didn't feel very seen. And what you see now happening, I think, is a lot of people not wanting to deal with that. And people are not wanting to be at a company that doesn't support them, doesn't see them, and doesn't, want to put forth the efforts to diversify. And so I think there's lots of strategies to increase diversity in the talent pipeline, to retain the employees that you're trying to recruit, and really excited about highlighting some professionals in those areas that can come into companies and really help them create a holistic strategy to do that.
That's awesome. I think it's tough sometimes with the implicit bias that I have personally, that I benefit from. It can feel tough to understand that frustration of not being seen and represented. And then, you mentioned moving to freelance maybe, or, like, I can't get it here, so I'll make it. But that shouldn't be the default, right? That shouldn't be what you have to do to make that happen. And, hopefully that is, like you mentioned, is starting to, tide is kind of starting to turn.
And I think that's really the point of Dreamin' in Color, right? Is to be able to create these communities, and so that people understand, okay, listen, what is it like to be a Black project manager? How do I succeed in this ecosystem? What are the tips? What are the tricks? Who are the people I need to know? How did you do it? And be able to highlight all of these amazing leaders, because we don't want people to feel like they don't see themselves in this ecosystem, whether you're Black, brown, whatever. And so that is the idea, is that we want to create a community and we want people to network so that we can come together and move forward. And I'm really excited about being an example for others that maybe haven't seen a Black-owned Salesforce partner in the ecosystem, or people that haven't seen Black technical architects or Black developers. And so being able to see that and get tips and come together as a community. And then, like you said, bringing other allies in and say, oh my gosh, I'm really learning a lot. How can I support you? Because one of the things that's going to be extremely important, and it's one of the questions I've gotten a lot about the event, is, well, if I'm not Black, can I attend, or can I sponsor, or where do I fit in? Right. And so I think allies really need to take more of an active role and being a voice for others in the room, of advocating for people in a room, taking your peers to the side to say, hey, listen, we need to be more inclusive. What you said was, can be taken wrong. And so it's going to take all of us working together. Like if my conference could be, funded by all Black Salesforce companies, that would be great. But unfortunately, we don't have enough to do that. And so it takes everyone to kind of put their best foot forward and do what you can do. And so I'm really excited to help to facilitate that and move forward some of the work that's already being done in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I definitely understand the idea of it's not for me, and you don't want to. I see this with the Women in Tech user group too, that, yeah, we know we're great. We already know we're great. Like, and so, yeah, we need you to also know and support that we're great. And that's part of the problem. So yes, come be part of the solution. But it's also interesting. I've had a few times in life where I think it's actually good to experience not being the majority. Right. So I'm going to come to Dreamin' in Color, and it's not about me, and it's not, like I said, I will not be the majority. And I think it's helps to put yourself in that position to understand, like you said, every other event you're paying to fly to, that, maybe this is my turn to be in the 5% and try to understand that. So I do want to talk about Dreamin' in Color too, but I would love to talk about Tech Forward a little bit as well. If you want to talk about what you do there and kind of how that started. It feels like you see an issue and you found something to start and solve it. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so Tech Forward started as HBCU Force because at the time, there was not any that I could see really well-known or visible initiatives to work with HBCUs to get those students exposed to SaaS careers or applications like Salesforce or Tableau. I mean, Tableau was pretty kind of well known in some schools, but Salesforce is definitely not known. And so having real university programs at some HBCUs.
Can we define HBCU real quick?
HBCU is a historically Black college or university. And so there are about a little over 100 HBCUs in the U.S.
Okay, perfect.
And so an HBCU is a categorization, a type of MSI, which is a minority serving institution. So there are Hispanic serving institutions and minority serving institutions, and there are HBCUs. And so there was a shift, I think, in some of the Salesforce marketing and promotion, where Salesforce started to promote more diversity when they were talking about different Trailblazers. But again, I just didn't see, there weren't any programs around HBCUs. And I wanted to first start with my alma mater, which is within Cook Me University, which is how this program started. I started there working with some students, teaching them about Salesforce, got them on Trailhead. And then I took that work and started to reach out to other HBCUs. And then the organization kind of grew from there, where I was not only working with some HBCUs, but I started working with some career transitioners. People were reaching out to me saying, you know what, I'm not in school, but I graduated from an HBCU, or I didn't graduate from an HBCU, but I'm really interested in wanting to get certified. Do you have anything for me? And so that's where we created our Forward into Tech program, where we do certification boot camps. And then I had organizations starting to reach out to say, hey, I'm a nonprofit. We have people here that want to learn more about Salesforce. And so that's where our Community Forward program came in. So that's kind of very quickly some of the background behind it. But we're really excited to be working with these different audiences. So we have lots of, we work with 4 schools. And we've had maybe 20 or 30 students per class per semester learn about Salesforce. These students that had never heard of Salesforce or any of the opportunities are now learning about Salesforce. Some of those students are getting certified, and we have 2 of my very first students that work at Cognizant or with Lev. And, straight out of school. So that's life changing.
Right. That's awesome. And it's so interesting how you start to do something just that makes sense to you, that is a small thing, and then people you build and then start to branch out into other things. And presumably, is that how the idea of Dreamin' in Color came about, or where was it? When did you decide you needed to plan your own event?
So last year I was in Tulsa for Juneteenth, and that is where I decided that I was really inspired to move forward with planning this conference. Being in the community of Tulsa and understanding what that community went through, it's this idea of people should just, pull themselves up by the bootstrap. And if you work hard, then you'll make it in America, this whole American dream. And one of the things that I like to remind people is that, Black Americans were doing that. They were building their own communities and their own towns and creating wealth. and those towns were burned down. Tulsa was burned to the ground. There's very little Tulsa left. And so that traumatizes people, this having to rebuild things over and over. And I think about that in my career, how many times my career, my confidence was burned down, and then having to rebuild that. And so Dreamin in Color is around, again, community coming together to help solve each other's problems and to be able to move forward together. And that is really what I'm excited about. You know, like I said, I'm sure I'm not the first person to have this idea. There are lots of people that have been talking about diversity in the ecosystem, or people have different passions. And so there's so much room in this ecosystem to find something that's passionate to you and to create initiatives or programs or webinars or whatever it is to move it forward. And so I hope this just sparks people to want to do more. That's
awesome. Yeah, I definitely think that there's, you know, even like you said, after I've been in, I guess now 15 years, that wow, that makes me feel old every time I think about and do the math. You know, that there's like, oh, blah 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 is doing this, or like who posted that job board, or who, you know, I just read this, you know, who was that, and still finding those pathways. And it almost feels like, you know, the new generation, right, of MVPs that are coming in, and people that are just the passion and the drive to help other people, like selflessly, right? That it's not just about me. It's, you know, oh, sure, I'll teach you how I did this. And then, you know, that becomes a blog or a video series, or, you know, an idea that becomes something. So that's awesome. So tell us the specifics about the event. So it's June 29th through July 1st. Kind of what's the, you know, I'm assuming there are sessions by, you know, community speakers, but what other kind of highlights will there be at Dreamin in Color?
Yes. So Wednesday evening is our cookout event that's sponsored by Mowgli. So we're going to have fun, barbecue, card games, music, just really a good time to network with everyone. And then sessions start on Thursday. So we actually have 4 session tracks. We'll have over 60 sessions. So there's a career and well-being track where we'll have sessions around just general how to create a career path for yourself. What are the different roles? How to be a Salesforce developer. We'll be talking about Salesforce architect track, Salesforce marketing, Salesforce design, which is one of the newer kind of roles that Salesforce has rolled out. We'll have a session led by a professional mental health professional around mental health in the tech space. We have sessions on salary negotiations. So we have a full track of amazing sessions by very qualified people in our career and well-being track. Then we'll have a best practices track. So that's everything from admin best practices, marketing best practices, design best practices, BA best practices. So there's all kind of sessions in that track. Then we have a leadership and entrepreneurship track. And so a lot of that is going to be around people that want to be or already are independent freelance consultants, or want to start an actual really full consulting company with other consultants. And so there's going to be sessions there led by the Salesforce partner team around how to, you know, what is the Salesforce partner program, and how to build your relationships and networks inside of Salesforce. And Josh Hoskins is leading a session on doing estimates and SOWs. And so all the things you would need to be a consulting partner or an ISV partner, we're going to be talking about in those sessions. And then our last track is our product and technical demos. So we're going to have some really cool, like we have a hands-on Tableau session. We're going to have some marketing cloud or engagement Pardot sessions, whatever you want to call it today. And then our amazing sponsors are going to have sessions that are going to be going over use cases with their products. And so it's going to be a really, really good track. And I think lots for everybody, from admins to developers to BAs to business owners, and to people that are new to the ecosystem. So I'm really, really excited for the mix of sessions. I mean, I built the agenda. I was trying to like look at the times, and I was like, man, I don't even know how I'm going to pick where to go.
Try and duplicate yourself.
I am.
Tag team and take notes so that you can share with somebody. And Cirrus Insight will be there giving offering headshots so people can
Yeah.
freshen up
And
their
our career
look.
and business lounge.
A whole lounge. I like it. What's going on in there?
So in our career and business lounge, instead of having this career fair where people just walk around the tables, our companies that are hiring, sponsors that are hiring, actually have an hour slot in our career and business lounge where we're going to promote the positions, and attendees will go there at that time to hear from that particular sponsor about their positions, about their company, and be able to meet those recruiters face to face.
Awesome.
And so, yeah.
Awesome.
It'll be there.
So we've got a lot of great stuff. Why North Carolina? Why Raleigh?
Yeah, so we chose Raleigh because the team, we actually looked for cities that had some sort of historical significance to them. And so Raleigh is really close to Durham, so they call it the Raleigh-Durham area, in which there's Black Wall Street there. You can learn a lot about the history of Durham and Raleigh. There are a lot of historical sites that we'll be posting about. There's also 10 active HBCUs in the North Carolina area. So lots of good Black history in that area. I found some amazing Black-owned shops and restaurants that I visited while I was there. I mean, I used to live in Raleigh, but when I went back earlier this year, I went to go visit a lot of these places. So I'm really excited about that aspect. We wanted to be as intentional as we could to support the Black community, Black vendors. And so that's an important part of our event.
That's awesome. So obviously, it would be great if people can come and be there, and there's still tickets available. But in terms of, we talked a little bit about, like, I am clearly not a Black person, right? But I can still be an ally and be supportive. What's one thing or two things maybe you can think of, day to day, either at work or in the Trailblazer community on Twitter, wherever I am, with other Salesforce friends, that I can kind of help support people of color in general?
So for Dreamin in Color, there is a sponsor a ticket option. And so allies can go and sponsor a ticket for other people to attend if you can or don't want to attend in person. And then in general, I think it's really important, like I said, to listen to your coworkers, understand how you can support them, advocate for them, be a sponsor for them, and really speak up, because we don't want it to always be left to, those that are more marginalized to always have to speak up, right? It needs to be more unified. It needs to come from the other side, and being able to, see people, understand people, and speak up for people is always helpful. And so as a manager, as a leader, as a coworker, just being super supportive and understanding the systematic issues that happen inside of everyone's companies, inside of the world in general, I think would be really helpful. And kind of what you said, kind of reading up on things or understanding what's happening and really just being aware. This whole idea about being woke is really just an awakening. It's opening your eyes to things that were already happening around you that maybe you didn't see because it didn't affect you. And it's things that we think about all the time. We think about it when we travel. They say, look for these things that could be happening when you travel, and look for a bag, or look for these things. Or when we go to other countries, we're, really cognizant of how we act in those countries and other people's cultures and customs. And so you just need to take that same kind of thought process and do that here with the people that are different, that are around you, to be able to say, how do I support you?
Right. Well, and if you don't know, ask, right? I don't think anyone would be offended of saying, like, how can I help you? Is there something I can do, or, you don't have to assume. You can ask questions. But sometimes I'm not shy, clearly. So, sometimes as things make a little more sense to me than maybe they do to others. But awesome. Well, I'm excited to be there and to learn more about this from you. I did want to wrap up with our Ad Minute segment. So something that you've read or watched recently that you'd like to share with our audience. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. And so I when I get some free time, I'm always on Salesforce Plus. And one of the series on Salesforce Plus that I really like are the Boss Talks with Ebony Beckwith. Mm-hmm. And so there's a session on there. It's episode 11 around designing your career with Trailblazers with Cheryl Feldman and Aaron McGriff. And I like that episode. I just shared that actually on my socials not too long ago. And so I really like that series and those sessions. And as people are thinking about how to build their careers, what your next steps are, I think there's some really good tips in those episodes.
Salesforce Plus. I like it. Mine is flow related because that's on everybody's mind. Andy Ucan on Salesforce Break just put out a really interesting article about the collection filter and collection sort challenge he made for himself. So really just doing one query and seeing what he could get to from most recent and last modified. And just, I think he ended up with like 8 different things that he could get, still just doing that one query and then kind of filtering and sorting those values. So we will link to that. Definitely something great to check out. And thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we see all of our listeners soon at Dreamin in Color.
Hopefully.
Thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Serious Insights for Admins. Don't forget to get your 14-day free trial and free yourself from the drudgery of manual data entry. Start now by visiting cirrusinsight.com. That's Cirrus, C-I-R-R-U-S, insight.com. And I'll see you next time.